The Hub is brought to you by Docomo Pacific Business and Leo Palace Resort Guam.
The protection for Guam has certainly ramped up as threats continue to brew in the region. The military is making its presence seen and heard loudly. This was the case for Guam on the night of December 10th. The Missile Defense Agency, for the first time ever, testing its capabilities and intercepting a missile launch off the northern coast of the island. The military calling the exercise a success.
An Air Force C-17 Globemaster III takes off from Andersen Air Force Base. The military air launching a medium-range ballistic missile off the coast of Guam Tuesday night. The Missile Defense Agency sharing images of the flight experiment during Exercise Slingstone. And on the ground, the Aegis Guam system, integrated with the new radar and vertical launching system, fires a standard Missile 3 block intercepting the target. The mission, a success. An historic moment for the military and for the region, as this is the first ever ballistic missile defense event for Guam. Given the designation Flight Experiment Mission 2, officials say this marks a pivotal step taken in defense of Guam and protecting forces from any potential regional missile threats. Guam Governor Lulian Guerrero and Guam National Guard Adjutant General Mike Cruz joined other military leaders at the Joint Region Marianas Regional Operations Center to witness the test. The governor stating, "I witnessed the first ever testing and success of the missile defense system in Guam. It was indeed a moment of satisfaction to see all the hard work, science, data, and technology come together for the defense of our island and our nation. Seeing the interceptor successfully launched and the target tracked and taken down was a great leap into the protection of our people. The system works," she says. Guam Delegate James Moylan also meeting with Missile Defense Agency leaders to witness the event. Moylan stating, "At no moment during this testing were our people, our island, and those within this region in any harm. The process will include an inspection of any debris to be conducted later today aboard Andersen Air Force Base." The congressman adding, "Today's test was a major step forward in our pursuit of 360-degree missile defense. The commitment to defending the homeland remains a top priority for me and my fellow Armed Services Committee members in Congress." Joint Task Force Micronesia Commander Navy Rear Admiral Greg Huffman stating the success of Slingstone is a testament to the incredible work our joint service team does every day to maintain a strong defensive posture in the Indo-Pacific region. Leveraging MDA's missile intercept test to train how we fight just made sense. We will take lessons learned and continue to strengthen the architecture of Guam's defense against evolving adversary missile threats. Simultaneously, the Navy's Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer USS Milius assisted to detect, track, and simulate engagement of the missile, providing air defense coverage from the sea. Task Force Talon, the Army's Terminal High Altitude Area Defense Unit, also received missile tracking information. The THAAD battery provides ballistic missile defense coverage for the entire island. The Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force Maya-class guided missile destroyer JS Haguro exercised its air defense support, increasing interoperability between international forces. Additionally, Slingstone provided an opportunity for the military and Guam Homeland Security Office of Civil Defense to rehearse the notification process and increase crisis response readiness.
The exercise comes as the military waits for the public to comment on an environmental impact statement for the Enhanced Integrated Air and Missile Defense System. We hear from military leaders on that when we return. You're watching The Hub.
The Hub is brought to you by Docomo Pacific Business and Leo Palace Resort Guam. The Hub is brought to you by Docomo Pacific Business and Leo Palace Resort Guam.
Welcome back to The Hub. The Missile Defense Agency recently hosting a series of town hall meetings to discuss its plans to construct an enhanced integrated air and missile defense system in multiple locations across the island. Let's hear from them.
I'm John Beer. I'm from the Missile Defense Agency, and Missile Defense Agency is responsible for the overall environmental impact statement. And so we'll be talking tonight about our proposed architecture that we are proposing for the island of Guam. to have that as part of this environmental impact statement. It goes through lots of information. I encourage you to download it, use the electronics, search keywords that you're looking for, particularly, whether it's from the sites that we've down selected to the economic impacts, to the island, to the historical, to the biological, so everything that folks have been asking us questions from last year and through some, questions that great questions you guys have asked over the year is contained in there. It's a large volume, but don't be afraid of it. Please open up the document and take a look at it. And I'm going to pass this over to Admiral DeVore.
Hey, half a day, everybody. It's great to be here with you and spend some time with you as you execute your duties of the press to be able to ask questions and work to hold us accountable. For those that don't know me, I've had the opportunity to meet a lot of you before. I'm the commander of Joint Region Marianas. So in that role, I exercise some installation oversight for each of the bases here on Guam, as well as close coordination with activities that we're doing up in the CNMI as well. I'm here in support of my two teammates here, as really kind of a resident here on the island and to be the face and voice of the military activities here that we are doing on island. So thanks very much. Look forward to your questions.
Thanks, Mark, and thanks everybody for being here. My name is Brigadier General Pat Costello. I'm the 94th Army Air and Missile Defense Command Commander. I serve really two roles. Number one, to synchronize joint integrated air and missile defense across the Indo-PACOM theater. And then I also serve as the operational commander for all ground-based, so all Army Air Defense Forces in the theater. The THAAD battery that's been down here defending Guam since 2013 is one of my subordinate units. I'm here to talk today about the need and how we're going to employ the system in the defense of the 175,000 American citizens here on Guam. So thank you.
So why is this particular missile defense system, multiple of them that will pretty much be constructed, necessary for Guam?
Yeah, so first and foremost, this is about homeland defense, right? I said it already. There's 175,000 American citizens down here that need to be defended, right, against an evolving, rapidly evolving threat across the world. If we take a look at world events in Ukraine and we take a look at what's going on in the Middle East right now with Israel, we see the rapid evolving of aerial threats, right? All the way from UAS, cruise missile, ballistic missile, hypersonic threats. Guam has always played a strategic place within the Pacific. Guam has a long history of playing a pivotal role within the Pacific. But first and foremost, the national strategy calls for us to focus on homeland defense.
I'm not sure who would answer this, maybe Mr. Bear. There's been talk in the past about eminent domain of properties on Guam. Is that still a possibility?
So out of the sites that when we were here in August of 2023, we talked about 22 sites, of which 21 sites were on the DoD land, and one site was on down here Molesso, which was on land was under the land trust, and we have since down selected to 16 sites, of which all are on DoD land. Up here you see the 16. If you were to count all these sites, there's 16 sites here for the Guam Defense System, and now there are a couple sites will require working out land agreements with the private land next to them, not to more to work out agreements not to build buildings up on right up against the property line and so forth like that. So the Navy Facilities Command out of Hawaii will be working with those individual landowners.
So, but that will be a lease arrangement or eminent domain?
No eminent domain. It'll be some mutually agreed to agreement. Whether it's leasing, or we don't plan to purchase it. It's more or less, there's there's still, you can still use that land for recreational, you can still use that land for several, things with regards to use of that land. We're just asking not to put buildings, 20-story skyscraper right next to the edge of the property.
But what is the plan B if the landowner was to decline to enter into an arrangement with MDA or
With
whatever entity it is?
Then we'd have to come back and revisit that decision on use of that site.
The Hub is brought to you by Docomo Pacific Business and Leo Palace Resort Guam. The Hub is brought to you by Docomo Pacific Business and Leo Palace Resort Guam.
Yeah, on the question of land use, I think, is some of that gonna, is the DoD gonna be looking to establish like a permanent conservation area? I know there were some folks on Guam earlier. Is that gonna be the kind of non-development agreement?
As part of the mitigations described inside the draft EIS, we talk about, how we're going to protect, threatened and endangered species and work through those mitigation, for those items identified. In the document, you can open up and see where we've done our biological surveys on all of these sites. So that gives you sort of gives you a great picture of the threatened and endangered species on the island, whether it's putting up fences to keep some of the boar, from coming in and destroying plants and so forth like that. So that's part of the mitigation plans that we'll work out with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife.
Do you folks have an estimate of how much acreage you're gonna have to figure out,
That's part of, as we finish up the EIS, that final, mitigation plan will be worked out with, between Missile Defense Agency, the Department of the Army, and Fish and Wildlife.
I'm sorry, I meant the amount of acreage where you're gonna be asking for, around fence lines near installations.
Yeah, in the document, it talks about the total acreage of these 16 sites, and it's significantly less than what is the size of Camp Laz. We are not, there's not a lot of acreage here total around these 16 sites.
I think a year ago, the number that was thrown out was like 1,000 acres that we were assessing.
Yes, we're still, it's less than that now. In the specific numbers are inside the EIS.
So how many people would be here at any one time to service the missile defense system?
So I think it's a two-faceted kind of question. I'll speak from the Army perspective. Right now, we have about 100 soldiers here just for missile defense from the THAAD battery. That does not include the contribution from the Guam Sec 4. The total growth for the Army contribution for the Guam Defense System is approximately 700 soldiers. The intent is to station them here and for them to bring or have the opportunity to bring their families with them.
700 soldiers?
Yes.
How about non-military personnel?
There are very few non-military personnel. There may be a few contractors here and there, but largely all the operations and maintenance of those Army systems are conducted by soldiers.
So 700 soldiers and their families at one time? Or?
No, it's going to be cumulative, and so at end state, that would be the 700 soldiers that I'm talking about. Let me turn this over to John, though, because the Missile Defense Agency contribution is a little bit different.
So for the Missile Defense Agency components, it's going to be around 100 total. And to add to General Costello's, the number that we used in the as part of our assessment, for the draft EIS was 2,300 by the time we get to full strength, and that's broken down by, as he mentioned, the 700 soldiers. With that, we used a factor of 1.3. Dependents with each of those soldiers. That's part of that 2,300. And then there'll be support contractors that support the day-to-day operations and maintenance of the system. And so that brings you up to a total of about 2,300 when you get out there in the beyond the 2030 timeframe.
When we're still doing this rotational basis, how many would be on Guam?
So for that, do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, from an Army, the rotational basis is we typically rotate soldiers in and out of duty stations depending on location. It could be an annual basis, it could be every 2 years or every 3 years. So that's from an Army perspective. When we say rotational basis, the flag for the headquarters will always stay here, but the soldiers will come in on and it's called permanent change of station, so PCS rotation. So typically every 2 to 3 years for an overseas assignment.
DoD will address military's need for medical and healthcare services on Guam in a holistic approach to address this healthcare impact. What does that mean, though?
So as we documented in the draft EIS, the 2,300 is not going to be a big impact, but cumulative, we know that there's challenges on the island for medical care, for the service men and women, their dependents, and also in the local community. So all that is cumulative when you throw the Guam defense system in with other ongoing projects on the island. Cumulative, there is a significant impact. We know that DoD is working through that now. We're are addressing not only hospitals, but schools and so forth like that. That because it is cumulatively it impacts, but individually as a Guam defense system, it does not.
Let me add just a little bit of color on top of that as well, right? As part of the Marine relocation to Guam, part of the agreement there was to establish a civil military coordination council in conjunction with the government, with the governor's administration and the agencies on Guam. So that process continues to play out. What I can tell you is we continue to expand how we're addressing those type issues in that. It's far beyond, where that process that started specifically about the Marine relocation now includes a much more broader look, as indicated in the fact sheet that you had there, that we're working with the agencies, not doing things in a vacuum, certainly not doing things by edict, working with the partners of the administration and Guam Housing Authority to take a look at the impact of the integration of the growth that is happening, whether it's the Marines relocating, in which we're doing numerous construction projects on island to accommodate that housing. But now as we add on other things, we got to be mindful of what that impact is to the housing market and remain committed to work with the governor and her staff on that.
The Hub is brought to you by Docomo Pacific Business and Leo Palace Resort Guam. The Hub is brought to you by Docomo Pacific Business and Leo Palace Resort Guam.
None of those said domes you see have anything to do with the system that's being described here today. First and foremost, nothing to do with any of those. So at least to arrest that first kind of concern and question, hey, are we moving ahead of something, ahead of a legal process that we have a responsibility to fulfill? So with respect to
Move on from that.
yeah. So with respect to mobility, if you wanted to address that piece.
So, Mr. Bay, you mentioned economic impact. Were you talking about the positive economic impact of these families and military personnel who are going to be stationed?
Inside the draft EIS, it breaks it down into the construction phase, how many workers would be on the island and how many workers we would pull from the local, available workforce, which we used the assumption 40% from local on the island to 60% would come in of the 400 approximately per year for about 10 years to complete this project. And so that direct and indirect and induced, economic impact it gets rolled in there, to then also, construction materials that will be bought here locally, to then, and then when the projects are done, we move into what's called the operations and maintenance state. And there, we're forecasting approximately about 150 million per year to economic impact to this area when you have the operators of the system, their dependence on the island, and then their indirect, and induced benefits.
What about the CNMI, and how far does that defense ring go?
Yeah, so there is some residual capability that extends to other parts of the CNMI. This is just one of many places that the Department of Defense is looking at. And to your previous question, there's a little bit of overlap, so I appreciated the question, on the mobility of the systems, right? If the threat becomes pointed somewhere else other than Guam, then Commander INDOPACOM can make a decision to extend some of or all of that capability elsewhere as the threat expands.
We are building new construction family housing inside the fence lines. There's still space probably to continue to do that. Likewise, there may be the right private opportunities available to us to partner in a public-private venture, so to speak. So I would say a lot of options remain open, and we'll certainly want to coordinate with the government here locally to make sure we're getting that balance mix right. You could swing that pendulum too far either way. Too much inside the fence line, now you're creating an economic deficit by virtue of a vacuum out of the economy, out in the community. Likewise, similarly, we could try to flood the market too much, which would also have a detrimental effect to the community. So I think it's got to be a smart balance that's in coordination with the local community and the governors and the villages about where that distribution of population and how that plays out.
When you say a public-private partnership, do you mean DoD partnering with the developer?
Yeah, in other places throughout the United States, there's certainly been public-private venture partnerships that have allowed things like that. We have solicited earlier this year a request for information out to industry to see what other local private opportunities had ideas. We received 21 responses to that, people that were suggesting ideas for that. We continue on our maturity and maturation process of that. The next step ideally would be a request for proposals. The first was just an industry survey, so to speak. Hey, what ideas do you have that we should be considering from a private perspective? The next step to that would be, do we issue a request for proposal? I'm certainly not at a point ready to comment on when we might issue a request for proposal, but I know that those are the steps we're working through that might be a follow-on piece to provide some private opportunities.
I know it's a bigger picture that you guys are looking at. Do you have any idea how many housing units, maybe outside the fence, that the buildup is going to need over the next 5-10 years? You guys have a figure you're working with?
Yeah, we're continuing to develop. I think there's probably on the order of 500 to 1,000 homes inside the fence line is kind of what we think we need to work on. How much of that spills out or could be absorbed into the community responsibly, I don't know. I think there's still a lot of work there to do before we determine really what a fine point number on. And that's where I would turn back to formal requests for proposals as well. Allow that specific analysis to complete so that we can share that and seek solicitations.
January 8th of 2025 is the deadline to provide comment on the Enhanced Integrated Air and Missile Defense System draft environmental impact statement. The military saying it's all being done in defense of the island. That's it for this week's episode of The Hub. I'm Nick Delgado. Stay safe, and we'll see you soon.